guys, welcome back. This is the second session of Android Study Jams by DSC AUCE. My name is Karun Karthik and I am the campus facilitator for this program. So in the first session, we looked at how to create a basic Dyro app. And in today's session, we'll be looking and in today's session, we'll be learning how to get user input in an application, followed by how to display a scrollable list. The first session will be taken up by Rohit Jayaraju. So without further ado, let's get started. Over to Rohit Jayaraju.
Good evening, guys. Welcome back to another session of Android Study Jams by DSC AUCE. My name is Rohit, domain member of Android Development Team, DSC AUCE. And as Karun Karthik has already briefed, I'll be taking up the first part of the session by starting it by getting user input from the user and the tip calculator app. And in the later part of this session, Karun Karthik will deal with the scrollable list. And without further much delay, let's get started. So I hope you can see my screen now. And yes, the topics which I'm going to cover in this session are from the unit 2 of Android Study Jam. And we have 9 pathways here, which I'll be dealing with one by one. And firstly we have the tip calculator app introduction, and then we have classes and inheritance in Kotlin. We have create XML layouts for Android and calculate the tip. And these two will be dealing with the themes of our app, like the look and feel of the app. So first we'll be dealing with all the backend, and later we'll be modifying the look of our app to make it look more cleaner and concise. And later we'll strive to create a more polished user experience. So let's get started. And the first two modules are of videos. So let's look into classes and inheritance in Kotlin. And let me remind you that we are not going to dig much deeper into this classes and inheritance in Kotlin. We'll only be dealing with the tip calculator app, and we'll mainly focus on getting user input. So let's take this code lab. And yes, let's go from here. So here we have the prerequisites, and here we'll be having the basics of object-oriented programming. So we have already dropped some videos on our YouTube channel regarding AUCE in Kotlin, and we dealt with classes and objects, and we also created a basic program in which will get you familiar with the concept of object-oriented programming. So these modules basically deal with all the inheritance mainly. So we have a parent class and a child class. So basically what Google is trying to tell us is we have a we have a base class and we have child classes. So basically it took an example of dwelling here, and in the child classes we have square cabin, round hut, and round tower. So we need to visualize this and compare this to layouts in Android Studio. Like we have, if you already gone through basics, we are already familiar with the text view, edit text, and many more views and many more components in the layout files. So those will be arranged in similar fashion, like you'll be having a view here and you'll be having subviews to this view. So in that way, an inheritance can be created. And all he's trying to say is the concept of inheritance, like the concept of base class and a subclass. So let's see how these affect the layout of our file. Let's get into next module and let's see what happens. See, create XML layouts for Android. Let's take the code lab. And yes, so we'll be creating our app now. We'll be start with the basic layout of our app, and at the taskbar at the bottom of my screen you can see my Android Studio open. I've already created a project, and if you don't know how to create a project, you can always refer to the basic Android Studio videos which we have already dropped on the YouTube channel. and I've already got a screen sharing app open here, this one, and I also have a third party app. So basically, we'll be running our app in the Android Studio with the help of Android Virtual Device Manager. And for some case, like for some reason, I have some bugs in my Android Virtual Device Manager, so I'll be using a third party app. So, but for you guys, I think I suggest you to use this. You have many devices right here. You can use them and you can do them on your own. Okay, let's get started. So basically, what's a tip calculator? Like when we visit a restaurant, we're supposed to give tip, right? So the quantity of tip may depend on the quality of food or quality of service we get, right? So this calculator does the work for us. So here he provided a simple link to calculate the tip for us. So let's check this out. So this is a tip calculator by Google. Like you can give some floating point random number here. Let's say 1200, and it says tip should be paid. It's $180, and if you increase the number of people, this gets halved, and you can change the percentage also here. So that's basically how our tip calculator works, and we'll be doing this version of it. Like we'll be doing this in our app. Okay. So as we all gone through the basics, let's try to identify some of the components in this layout file. So we have this cost of service, which is basically an edit text. You can take this as a quiz. This is an edit text. The text below it is a text view, and these buttons are called radio buttons. Like, what's special with the radio buttons? This is basically a radio group, and these are called radio buttons. So basically, only one can be selected. Like you can't select multiple options out of this. So basically, that's why these are called radio buttons. And here we have a switch which can go either on or off. Like sometimes we want our tip to get rounded off. Let's say we got $10.5 as the tip, and we want to make it 11. So in that case, all we can do is we can round up the tip, and the moment you hit calculate, then your tip amount should be appearing right in here. And here, as I told, we have already identified all the views in our app. So that's what it's trying to tell. And yes, you need to open your Android Studios, and you need to create a new project named tip time, or with any name you want, and make sure you select Kotlin here and give some minimum SDK so that your app is supported over multiple devices. Yeah, read and understand HTML. So in the previous module, I've already told you, right? He took the example of a dwelling. So in this, so through that, what he's trying to tell us is, in similar fashion, we'll also have the views as a parent and subclasses. Let's say we have one group as a parent class, and we have another view group as its subclass. So it's a view group, right? So it's a collection of views. So basically, this can be a text view, image view, or buttons as they are highlighted here. These can be anything basically. So this is basically a start tag and end tag. These are all the basics which we already covered, and we'll be dealing with everything. So let me open my Android Studio and give you a brief introduction one more time for those who guys who missed the previous sessions. So this is basically my Android Studio, and I already created a project, and I also gave a name to my project, which is tip final. Let me show you. Yeah, let me make this big for you. Yeah, we have this layout file here. So initially this looks empty actually with a hello world text. You have this design view, you have this split view, and you have everything. So I hope you are already familiar with all the basics, so we can just jump right into it. So let me open. Yeah, let's start building our basic layout. Yes. So initially we're asked to put our Android Studio in the split view, because we'll be dealing with both the code part and the design part. So yes, so that we can see all the changes which we make here on the right hand side. Yeah, let us make some arrangements here initially. So we don't want this text view initially, so we can delete it right from here, or you can simply delete it here. If you delete this text right here, you can see that the hello world text just disappears. and can go back to the screen. And yes, so this is basically our layout, empty layout. So initially we are following a constraint layout. You can follow any layout possible. You can use either linear layout or relative layout. For this app, I think relative linear layout would be the easiest one, but constraint layout is the one which is used universally, because it is the most flexible layout out there. Because if we are designing an app, our app should be comfortable to use with phones of different screen sizes. Like we shouldn't face any issue, and our app should be universal, right? Like it won't be a good thing if our app won't run on a phone of different screen size. So to make it universal, we need to use a flexible layout, and constraint layout is the one we want here. So one good practice is adding a padding to your layout, constraint layout. Let me add, yeah, if you type in padding and add 16 dp, so that our elements don't get stuck to the ends of the screen. So basically what we can do is we can create an imaginary, if you look at my mouse pointer, like a border will be created, an imaginary border of size 16 dp, and our elements start from here and not from the edge of the screen, which looks more cleaner, by the way. Yes. And yes, initially what we need to do is we need to add some we need to start adding our elements to the layout file. So the first element we'll be adding is the edit text. So we have this edit text right here. Yes. So as you can see here, this is an edit text. So every element will be having an id, so we need to do some manipulations and we need to operate on this edit on these elements, right? So we'll be needing this. And two most important parameters are the layout height and the layout width. These are really very important, and any wrong values here will make your app terrible. And we have input type, which is text. And actually in cost of service, I mean, the amount you're giving a number, actually it might be an integer or a floating point value or a decimal. It will be 5.5 or 100 point something. So it shouldn't be text here, we'll change it later. But for now, let's add a text view and see what happens. So this is an edit text. As you can see, an element got added to the screen, and there's something wrong here because it prompts us with a red warning. So let's see what's wrong here. So basically we are missing some constraint here. It says we are ignoring some constraints. So basically what happens is, in constraint layout, one important thing to remember is every element should be constrained to the top mandatorily. If not, your element will jump right on top of the screen as you start the app. So which is not a good thing at all. So in constraint layout, the main agenda would be to give some constraints to every element. Like you need not give all the 4 constraints, like the vertical ones and horizontal ones, but at least the top ones, or minimum of 2 constraints, so that your element behaves properly. So let's see what constraints we need to give in order to make it look good. So, and yes, we'll be adding 2 constraints here. One constraint would be mandatory as I already told you, which would be the top constraint. See, constraint start to the start of parent. So we need to specify from where our edit text starts, basically. So this is for that. And we also have this constraint. So let's just give some constraints. Actually, you need not copy and paste here. Actually, you can click this button and you can add the constraint here itself. See, a new line appeared here, which means you already added constraint, top constraint. It turned blue, which means our element is constrained to the top of the screen. But let's do it this way as we are dealing with the code. Yes, you can see here, this is the line which you already placed now. And this is another constraint, which is this one. Constraint start to start of parent. So basically what happens, this is the parent layout. So this constraint layout is basically the parent, and whatever goes inside are its children. So this edit text is basically its children. So what basically we are telling here is our element should start from the start of parent. our parent is starting from here, right, with a gap of 16 dp, which I mentioned earlier. So our element starts from there, and our element got constrained to the top of the screen. So that's what happens here. And this input type will be changing it soon, which would be decimal mostly. And yes, so basically we don't want our edit text to be this long, right, because we'll only be entering couple of digits, we'll be giving an amount, right? So we don't want this to be this long. Let's see, we have a long edit text field, right? We don't want this to be that long, so we will basically decrease the size of the field actually. So basically, yeah, here we have text, right? We can change this to number decimal. As I already told you, we'll be dealing with a number, right? So let me give a number decimal here, and let's also give a hint actually, because our users shouldn't get confused, right? So let's say our hint would be cost of service. So our edit text looks good. The only thing which is left is to deal with the size of this edit text. So let's see. Yeah, as you can see here, the width of the edit text is changed to 160 dp. Initially our width is match parent, which means this matches the size of the parent. This the parent is this much long with 16 dp on both the sides. So basically the edit text takes the whole screen. We don't want that to happen. So basically we change the width to the desired amount. I think he gave 160 dp if I'm not wrong. Yes, 160 dp exactly. And yes, so we are done with the edit text. And the another element which we need to add was the how was the service text as a heading to these radio buttons. So yes, for the text view, as you already know, we'll be adding a text view right here, but we need to constrain it properly so that the text is properly readable or legible to the user, and he won't face any difficulty in reading out the text on a layout file. So basically what we need to do is we need to create a text view basically, and let's see how this text view looks like. So as you can see here, let me zoom it for you. Yeah, this looks clumsy, right, because we haven't added any constraints initially to it. So basically this looks empty, and we are also missing, we also got a red error to the text view because we haven't added anything yet. And yes, we have also got a missing tag here. So basically what we need to do is we need to place this on the bottom of the edit text. So let's get into it. Okay, yeah, these are the two constraints which will be adding, to the to our text view. Let's see. Yeah, I forgot to tell you, as I told you, an id is really very important for every element in our layout file. So here we have plain text input. Actually, to make it more readable or to make it more usable, a good practice would be to name it the same as text. Actually, you can say ignore the spaces and use the underscores. Services, service, fine. And text view, yeah, it's fine. The text view is also fine. And you'll be adding two constants actually. So add bottom. You need, so this should be this should be in the bottom of the cost of service field. So let's start typing in bottom. So we have a constraint top to bottom of, and it also prompts us with the cost of service ID. So this went down, so that went well. So but we did not add a constraint here. See, this still shows a red in here because we didn't add a horizontal constraint. So minimum one constraint should be added to ignore this to avoid this error. So yeah, I think it's the start of constraint start to the start of these two are really very important to parent. Yeah, now the error goes away. Now we are good to go with this. And we also need to give an ID to it. Let's see what ID we have here. Yeah, service question, it's a question, right? So you can give any ID you want, but make sure that you give a good one so that you can refer it later, or which should be more clear to you. Yeah, it's fine. Now we can close of this text view, and we are done with two elements. And yes, this is how our layout looks like at the end of this module. Okay, let's go with the tip options. Let's make sure everything went well. Yeah, let's go to tip options. So basically, we need radio buttons, right? We have already seen we have three fields. For amazing, we have 20%. For good service, we have 18%. For okay, we have 15% of our tip amount. So basically, what are radio buttons? So here is a snapshot of the Google query right here. So basically, one catch is you cannot create these radio buttons directly because you need a radio group actually when you want to create multiple radio buttons. So a radio group is basically a placeholder for holding the radio buttons. It's like a container. So you can, it will be easy to access all the radio buttons. Like if you want to do a certain operation on all the radio buttons, you need not go through all the radio buttons. You can just make changes in the radio group because it is the parent group of those radio buttons. So yeah, we have this radio group. So initially we'll be creating a radio group here. Here we have a GIF saying the same, and this is the radio group. And let's see what happens as soon as we add the radio group. Yeah, this is the radio group. Yeah, nothing is visible right here because we haven't added any buttons yet. So whatever buttons you are going to add, whatever radio buttons you are going to add would go in this radio group field, radio group subclass, because this is the parent class, and the subclass or the child class would be the radio button themselves. So we already created a radio group, and we have also given an ID. This is standard thing. We shouldn't forget doing it. We have layout width, layout height, set to wrap content. So what's wrap content basically? So the size would be depending upon the content which would be given inside the radio group. So that is what this is about. And we want our orientation to be vertical. So our options should be visible one after the other, right? We don't want it sideways. If you want it sideways, you can give horizontal here. That won't be a problem. And we're also giving a constraint here. Yes. So we are pretty much good about the radio group. And let's add radio buttons here. So we are supposed to add radio buttons in this space. So this is a radio button. So first we'll be adding the 20%, which is the amazing, this one. Yeah, this one. This radio button, or radio button saying that field. And yes, and it's actually very simple actually. You can, this is similar to adding a text view or an edit text. There's nothing here. And yes, we have a radio button, and as you can see, an option already popped up right here. We also have given an ID to it, which is option 20%, and we have layout width and layout height, which are set to wrap content, which I already told you before the meaning of it. And the text actually, and there is actually a small disadvantage in giving the text like this, because when your app needs some translation between different languages, and this is a hard-coded string actually. So yeah, it says hard-coded string should use string resource. So basically, this is not a good good programming practice to give strings in such way in Android Studio. So to make it more cleaner, you need to add a strings resource, which means you need to note down all the strings which you come across in your app, and you need to store all the strings in one file, and from there you need to make a reference. So we'll look about it in the later part of the session, but for now let's give strings in this way itself. Okay, add the radio button, and similarly we have these both radio buttons also. Excuse me. Yeah, you have three radio buttons, right? These three are all the same except for the IDs in the text they have. See, there are a change in IDs, and the text goes from good and okay. So you can simply copy the same first radio button, and you can simply change the things, or you can just do it this way. Yeah. So So basically we're ready with the radio buttons. Initially you want something to be checked, right? Like if you want to assess the default behavior of your radio group, you can, as I already told you, you can manipulate those things in the radio group field, which is you can say if it's check, yeah, check the button. So if you can choose the button which you want to be selected when you open your app initially. So I want uh 20%, which is amazing. Yeah, yeah, this gets selected by default. So if you don't want this, you can put to good or okay, depends on your choice. And yes, let me show you once again if you missed that. This is called Android checked button. And one more important thing, like when you I'm copying and pasting, right? So but when you want to type the whole thing, for some elements, let's say for example orientation, like Android Studio gives a prompt of things as soon as you type. Like you type as you type layout width, you will be getting all the options in the form of a drop down list, and you will be selecting it. But for some elements like orientation, you won't be getting anything down, like it won't suggest you anything. So in that case, you need not worry. I think it's kind of a bug or something due to multiple versions of the studio. So you need to type the whole thing, and it works just fine. Yeah, yeah, add a default selection, which we already did. We already kept this checked. This went well. Let's get to the next part of the video. Complete the rest of the layout. Yeah. So basically we are done with the edit text. We are done with the text view. We are done with the radio groups, and we only have two more elements to add to our layout. After which we can go and start our coding part, which is the round tip switch and the calculate switch. So let's go and add this round tip switch, which is a very easy thing to do. And this is the code for it. And yes, so we'll be giving up an ID to this, which is the roundup switch. The height would be wrap content. And as you can see, we didn't give layout width to be match parent here. For most of our elements, we did give match parent, right? But for this element, we gave 0 dp. And yes, for some elements, you should be giving 0 dp. The reason being, like, excuse me, the reason being, like, if you give match parent, our element would be as long as the size of the parent. But when you give 0 dp, this is actually a default value. So as you give 0 dp, this won't occupy the whole screen. If you give 0 dp, uh, that element gets resized for different phones, different mobile phones, so that you won't face any trouble. So for some elements, just keep in mind that you need to give 0 dp instead of match parent. That's one thing you need to take care of. And let's add switch element real quick to this element. Yeah, we need to add this outside of a radio group. Keep that in mind. Yeah, our indentation is very really important. Actually, this got a bit of spoil. Okay, so by default, yeah, by default our round up tip switch got selected. But if you don't want that, you can change this here. Android checked is set to true here. Like if you don't want it to be true, you can change it to false. It will be fine. And the remaining constraints or remaining attributes are all the same. You can just identify them. You have the constraints here, you have the text, you have the ID. And as you can see some common attributes which goes into every text, right? Like every element has an ID, the width and height, which are really very important. And you have the text and the constraints. So text, yeah, it's optional, but constraints are a must when you're using constraint layout. So those are the things which you need to keep in mind when operating on constraint layout. So let's go. Yeah, we are done with the switch. Let's add calculate button real quick. Yeah, as you can see, you've got a blue colored button. You may not get a blue colored button or a designed button like this initially in your Android Studio. You need to add some dependencies or repositories from the Material Studio website, Material Design website, I'm sorry. But any button goes actually, because we are dealing with the backend, right? Later I'll show you how to do the themes and all. Yeah, this is the button. And as you can see, again, another element of the day, we have the ID here, the width and height. as usual, you can set this to wrap content, but 0 dp would be a good option when we are operating on constraint layout. And we have calculate text here, which means our button should read calculate, right? So we have text attribute set to calculate, and as usual, our button should be below the roundup tip attribute, roundup tip element. So yes, it says the top constraint of this element should be to the bottom of the roundup switch. That is what it says. And yes, you need to add this constraint, right? The horizontal constraint. So this is basically it. So this line says our button starts at from the far left of the screen or from the start of the parent. And yes, this ends in the ends of the parent. So you have both the horizontal constraints and the top constraint set to the bottom of roundup tip. So let's see if everything goes well. Yeah. So I think we are done with all the layout part, and we need to get into the coding part actually. Yeah, we have, yes, one more element is left over, which is the result actually. That is the main element to our layout, right? Because that is where or that is how our result would get displayed onto the screen. Okay. Yeah, we'll be doing that. Yeah, this is the text view here, right? Yeah, this is the text view. To copy it, and another element actually you can create an element, and if you want to create a similar element, you need not type the whole thing, which would make your thing cumbersome. So you have an see a tip amount appeared here. Actually, you can set an on-click listener to the text views also. Like till now, you have set up on-click listeners to buttons, right? In a similar fashion, you can set up on-click listeners to the text view also, so that you can change the text upon clicking on the text view. So that is why we have Android text set to tip amount. We have both the constraints, and this is to the bottom of this button. So that is why we have given the idea of the button here, constraint top to the bottom of this button. It lies on top of bottom of this button, and it lies on the end of the parent. So constraint end to the end of the parent. So that went well. And the width and height is set to wrap content. For most of the text views, we do this. We set everything to wrap content because our uh, our font size should be wrapped inside the content itself, and we have given an id to this also. So we are done with this. So this is how our app looks like in the end. And yes, this is one of the important slide, as you will deal with most of the warnings you get initially. So yes, so if you go to Android Studio and if you switch to design view right here, yeah, you have a lot of warnings here. These are not errors actually. Like you can leave them as it is and your program works just fine. But it's good to it's good for not having any warnings in your program. So let me see what this says. So when you click on the warning, it says yeah, hard coded text. Yeah, you click on the warning, it says hard coded text, and we are not supposed to do this. So to fix this, you can click the fix button, and it says it this string gets referenced to this string. So you need to click OK. So in similar way, actually you can yeah, in similar way actually you can fix all the hard coded strings here, which won't be a problem at all. And we also have a tip result. I won't be doing for all the elements because that won't make any change for this app. But when you are designing scalable, large scalable apps, I suggest you to avoid these warnings by creating strings on your own. Yeah, okay. So what basically happened is, if you go into project panel right here, yeah, let me go into project panel, and we have go into resources. We have values, right? Go to strings. So let's see here. We have set of strings which have added, like as soon as we fix the warning symbol right there. So we have the app name. Yeah. So we have set this to app name. Yeah, that's over. So we don't want, we reference this string, we reference this cost of service to this name, and how was the service to this name. So basically what you have done is we have created a resource file, or we have created a place where all our references to our strings will be stored in a resource file, so that everything looks organized. And this fixes one more important problem, like when you are switching between multiple devices, like our like when our text gets converted between multiple languages. So this we may get a lot of errors actually when we give hard coded text. So to avoid those errors or those warnings, it's better to create a resource file in which we give all our strings in advance, like all the strings which you're about to use, like the hello world, the how was the service text and everything. I think it's better to give it in a resource file. Okay, that went well. Solution code, yeah, everything is done and dusted. And yeah, this is done. And we have we are done with the fourth one, I guess. Yeah, let's go with the fifth one. Later on we'll be seeing themes. That won't be a problem for us. Yeah, let's get started. And yes, we have all the prerequisites. So basically what we'll be doing now is we'll be dealing with the main activity.kt file, because most of our work in the activity underscore main.xml file is done. Like we are done with the design part. Now let's get into the coding part by getting into the main activity.kt file. The project panel, as you might know, you can see all the hierarchies here. Like we have our projects in the Java file, and you have all the resources in the resource file, and you have multiple views here. You can set to project view, and you can set to resource Android view, so you can get. So this is the most flexible one for our project right now, as we won't be using much of the project files. And yes, yeah, project structure. I told you the same, right? The structure and the hierarchy of the files which are in the project panel. Yeah, view binding. Yeah, this is one of the interesting module. Yes, initially yeah, let me take Android Studio. Yeah, so we have multiple elements here, right? We have edit text, we have text views, we have radio buttons, we have roundup tip text view, we have calculate button, right? So basically you need to link everything to our code file. Basically, like if you want to access each element, we need to identify them, or we need to locate them by resource. So far we have used something called find view by id, and in the parenthesis and as an argument we pass in the id of that file. So basically what you have done is, if you want something, let's say you have text view, right? To use this in our code, we use something called find view by id, so that we can bind our element into the code. Like we can do some manipulations to the text view through our code. So that is why we are getting the id by using the find view by id. So it's okay if your project is on a small level, like you don't have multiple elements and you only need to use some find view by ids. But on large projects, I think it would be a tough job to write the same line again and again, and it would look a lot uglier. So one smart thing to do is use view binding. So what view binding does is, you need not write these things, like you only need to use once. Basically you need not write multiple find view by ids. So what this view binder does is, it binds all your views, so that you need not identify each view separately. So let's see how you can get started with this view binding. So initially here we are provided with a small snippet of code which says, yeah, build features and view binding to true. So let's take this, and yeah, he's telling us to copy and paste this code in our Gradle app and in the Android session, right? Yeah, in build of Gradle app. So we need to copy this piece of code and go to Gradle, go to module. Yeah, in this Android, you can paste it anywhere under this. Excuse me, in this Android, you can paste this anywhere basically. Yeah. So as soon as you paste this thing, you get a prompt here. Yeah, sync view. You need to sync this so that your changes are recorded and you're good to go. It says Gradle sync in progress. Yeah, it's done. Yeah, now you're ready to use this binding view. So initializing the binding object, this shows the figure actually. So we need to make some changes to our main activity.kt file. So basically this is our main activity.kt file, and this onCreate method is the one which gets called as soon as we start our app. So we need to make some changes to this because we need to use view binding, right? So to use the view binding, we need to change that look to this. Like we need to see some changes are made here. A variable is created named binding, which is of the type activity. Yeah, a variable is created, and yeah, one more line is added here. Yeah, first let's write this there and let us go through each line about what is going to tell us. Yes. Yeah, it says these are not imported. You can simply press alt plus enter, it takes care of the whole thing. Yeah, so basically this is a global variable. You can think this as a global variable because it's not global actually. It is declared as it. You can call this as a top variable actually, because we'll use this view binder throughout our program, right? So that's why we are declaring this right at the top. And one more element which got added is this binding method. So basically what we are doing is we are inflating the view binder. So what's inflation actually in terms of Android Studio? Like you have a layout, right? You may arrive at some cases where you need to create multiple layouts. So you want to reuse the code or you want to clone similar views. So in that case, you'll use something called an inflator. So in this case, we are inflating the bind view. So we have this binding view. In case if you did not understand, don't worry, because this won't be this won't play a major part in our app. You can simply write find view by ID, but this is just to tell you how easy could it be. Yeah, this is one more line which got added again. And yes, see here, yeah, like if we haven't done this view binding, our old way would be consuming these two lines. Like we need to declare a button first of the type button, and you need to use find view by id, and you need to set this text. These are two lines of text. So better way after view binding would be simply using binding.myButton. But even though we'll be using two lines of code here, and here we can do everything in one line actually. So my button actually is the variable of type button, and basically what we're doing is we are getting the id of our button in the first two line, in the first part of this line. And dot text, basically what you're doing is yeah, best way, yeah, basically we are setting the text on our button. So here it says calculate, right? Like when you go to this thing, yeah, it says calculate, right? So basically what we're doing is instead of calculate, we are setting this to display our button by simply using one line of code instead of two lines of code. So that's what view binding does exactly. Yeah, now we're ready with everything. Now let's get into the coding section. Yeah, so basically yes, so let's start with the button actually. So initially when you press this button, you want some action to happen, right? So you need to add an on click listener actually. So what on click listener does is yeah, so let me show you. These are not needed, you actually can close them right away. Yeah, yeah, it shows red because yeah, let me explain this line for you. So binding dot calculate button. So basically we are finding where our calculate button lies. Basically we are giving the id of our calculate button. So in the activity.main, like when you click this button, you can see here, yeah, the id of this button is the calculate button thing. Yes, and we are setting the on click listener. Like we need not specify what this is of. Like you need not tell that we are doing this on a button. So that's the advantage of the binding class right here. So yes, what we are doing is get the id of the button and set an on click listener to it. Like you want some action to happen as soon as you click the button, and that action would be here in the parenthesis. So that action would be calculate tip. So we haven't specified what this calculate tip does. So that is why it is showing in red actually. So I can actually create an abstract function calculate tip actually. Yeah, here it says create function calculate tip, and yes, it's not yet implemented because we have created it just now. Yeah, we have fun calculate tip here, but it got added as private, which is a good thing. In the later part, it also suggests us to do the same, adding private, but for now, let's add simply like let's omit the private part of it, and let's see what happens. Yeah, our code looks like this after that set of operations. Okay, and we need to get the cost of service now. Yeah, yes, now we need to type something in our edit text, right? Yeah, we have our edit text here. We need to type something here, and we need to click the calculate button. So the data which would be going into this function would be the edit text, obviously. Like we need to reference that here, and yes, see here value. Yeah, we are creating a value, and we are creating a variable actually, which of the type val, and we are naming it as string in text field, which is the cost of service, and we are telling it to go and find it from our resource file, from our activity file. So basically, what this does is this finds this part of the code finds out the ID of our element and assigns it to our string in text field. Yeah, dot text. Yes. Yeah. But one more important thing, it is not the text we want, right? Because you're giving a number right there, so you can give integer, but even integer won't does the job for you, because if you want the number to be in decimals or real values, so let's give double for that reason. Goes with the small letter, I guess. Two double, yeah, it must be two double, I guess. I think we need to convert this to two double. Actually, and later in next part of the video, I think we can change this to double actually. Yeah, actually didn't got prompted right there, I don't know why. It says two double. Okay, we have done to two double, and yes, but still there is a problem with it. Like even if you convert the text in the text field to a double, actually you need to convert to a string once again to do all the manipulations. Needs to be called on a string. It turns out the text attribute of a text is an editable, so basically you need to convert it to a string to make it possible. So basically, yes, you need to make it to a string actually, and the next and in the next part you need to do that. You need to change this to a double. So basically it's two lines of code actually you can do this in one line itself. You can add two double right here itself, but it would look clumsy. So what he had done is add two lines for it. So that's what we have done. Let's make changes here. Yeah, this looks clean now. Yeah, now we need to get tip percentage. So basically these two lines deal with the edit text. Now let's get the percentage of the tip, like from the radio buttons. So we have radio buttons here, right? Let me show you. Yeah, so basically you want 20% of the tip. Let's say your amount displayed here is the variable x, so 20% of x would be 0.20 into x, right, multiplied by x. Similarly for good it's 0.18 into x of the original amount. 15% of the original amount, which is 0.15 into x. So basically you need to do that. So before doing that we need to receive the user input, right? So basically the same thing around. You will take the id from the linked resource file. Yeah, see binding dot tip options dot check radio button id. So check radio button id, this id will be storing in a variable called selected id, and based on the selected id, the value we get here will do some certain set of calculations. Like if it's 20%, we'll multiply it by 20, and so on. So let's do this. Yeah, yeah, that went well. Yeah, so we're done with it. but this can take multiple values, right? So here comes the problem of conditional statements. So this is a good place to test your understanding with conditional statements. So basically we want to calculate the tip percentage, so that depends on the option which we have just selected right now. So basically this is the when statement which takes in selected id as an argument. So based on this selected id, it says if we get uh, if the user selected the one with 20%, which is amazing, then the value would be 0.20, which means assign 0.20 to tip percentage. Or if the user selected 18%, assign 0.18 to the tip percentage. Else, if both cases fail, you can the only thing which is left is 0.15, and you can simply assign it there. So that is what happened right there. Yeah, that went well. And yes, at the end of our code, or at the end of this module, our code looks like this. And yes, we need to calculate the tip right now, right? So the tip would be, the formula would be the same, x into the tip, x into the percentage of the tip. So basically the cost is nothing but the actual amount, and the tip percentage is which one, the one which I calculated recently. So yeah, let's make it quick. It's done. And we have a switch element. You can check these, check the attribute to see if the switch is on. Okay, that's fine. So we are done with calculating the tip also. The only thing which remain is to display the result. So before doing that, there's one more option which we might have forgot here, which is the roundup option. So that there's already an element. So what we'll be doing is our operation would depend on the selection on the status of the switch. Actually, if the switch is on, we'll be rounding up the result, else we won't be doing it. So basically the first step which we will be doing is we need to check if the switch is checked or not. So basically this line does exactly that. So basically roundup, yeah, we are finding the value, and this is actually a boolean actually. Yeah, this is the this is the id, and you're checking whether it's yeah, dot is checked. Yeah, this what this member function does is it tells us whether the radio switch is on or off. So the true or false value gets assigned to the roundup variable right here. So yeah, yeah, that goes well. Round tip, yeah. So basically we have got the value whether it's on or off. Now let's do a roundup. Yeah, now if roundup, so this can take true or false, right? So if this value is true, which means if the switch got selected, then round off the tip. So how do you round off the tip basically? So basically in high school math you have done step functions, right? We have heard about step functions and ceiling and floors of a variable, right? So basically what we are doing is we are calculating the ceiling of the tip. Ceiling is basically the upper bound or the next integer, next nearest integer. Let's say we got 10.5, the ceiling of 10.5 would be 11. Okay, and the floor of 10.5 would be 10 itself. So basically here we are interested in calculating the ceiling of the tip. So yeah, let's place this conditional statement right here. Yes, that went well. At this point, yeah, we are done with everything. So one more important thing right here. Yeah, we are dealing with currency, right? We want dollars or pounds, or we want to specify currencies of different countries. So in this case we are using pounds, right? So we can, Android Studio, one good thing is Android Studio even provides us with currency formatting options. So yeah, this is the instance we'll be using. Number format is already a built-in class, built-in object actually. Yeah, and we'll be using one member function of that class, which is get currency instance. And let's see how we can make use of this in our calculate tip function. Yeah, we'll create a variable called formatted tip, in which we'll be storing the formatted tip. So what we'll be doing is, yeah, we'll be using this part of code, and we'll format this. And what are we going to format? The tip, right? The final result. Yeah, yeah, this tip we are going to format it, whether in dollars or pounds or rupees or something else. So let's see if we can format this code. Yeah, this gets formatted. Yeah, this shows an warning here. Unresolved reference number format. Let's try to import something. Yeah, here we are supposed to import java.text to make it work. Yes, the first one, not the second one. Yeah, we're done with it. And we need to display the tip amount, right? So everything is done, but it's not complete without displaying the text, right? So now it's time to display the tip amount in text view element of our app. Yeah. So what we have done is we have formatted it, right? So we can't display it right away. So this is actually a format specifier which we have already used in high level languages such as C, C++, etc. So we will be using the same here. So what we'll be doing is we'll be taking up, so we need formatting, right? Formatting to our string. So basically I told you where the string.xml file is located. So go to your project pane, go to your values file, go to your strings resources, and make sure uh, you place a percentile s here. And why we are doing this? And we are doing this because we want to format our string. Yes, I think we are good to go now. Yeah, yeah, this is done. And yes, so tip result. So what we need to do is we need to manipulate tip result. Tip result is the final answer which we need to display below the calculate button. So basically we want to set the tip result. Dot text implies setting up the text, like how we want text view to get displayed on the screen. Dot text, we want this text to be, and we are getting the string, and which is the tip amount. Tip amount, yeah. Tip amount is basically the ID of a result, and what we are passing here is the formatted tip, the final answer which we have got. Yeah, this is the formatted tip here. So this line does exactly that. So you can't do it directly. You need to make sure of this. Make sure that you write this line there. Oh, sorry. Yeah, yeah, I think I have. Yeah, that went well. And at the end of the module, our element looks like this. And by default, you want something to be displayed here, right? Like our user gets confused as to what's this tip amount about. So by default, as you checked, by default you gave a default behavior to this radio button, right? Like you want amazing to get checked in the start of your app. In a similar fashion, you want something here to be displayed by default. You can say $10. So what he has done is yes, he has set this text to $10. So let me change this. So let me get back to the studio, and here is our text view. So instead of this text view, you can assign something so that a default behavior is seen there. Let's say yeah, yeah, $10. It shows $10. Everything looks good so far. And yes, so basically we are done with the app, and let's see if our app works or not. So basically yeah, yes, let's run this. This is my screen share of my mobile phone, and let's see if this runs properly, and if there are any errors we can debug them. It says Gradle build running on the bottom right here. Takes a couple of seconds. I don't know, it's taking so long. I think it's because of multiple threads running. Okay, meanwhile, I think yeah, the install is done, I guess. Yeah. And yes, this is the app. And yes, we can select the radio buttons. I'm checking the radio buttons. And our roundup tip switch is also working. Let's give some input and see what happens. And let's say 250, it says 50 pounds. Let's say good, and click the calculate button. It says 45. So our app looks fine so far actually. But does it work in corner test cases also? Like, you need to check all possible ways, right? That is one good thing in checking. So let's not give any input and see what happens. Let's not give any input and see what happens. And our app started crashing. So why our app started crashing? So you can debug our app actually. So that is our next module. Let's see why our app crashed actually. Like, we didn't give any input and our app crashed. Yeah, test and debug field. And yes, the problem would be in this line mostly, let's say. So we need to debug the crash. Like, we need to know why our error has happened actually. So let me make an hold on guys. Sorry for the interruption guys. Okay, let's resume. Let me make sure, yeah, it's gone. And yes, let me get into Android Studio and let's see where the problem happened. Like, you can open the logcat here and let's see if there's any problem. You can see some red thing. Okay, let's debug here in the screen itself. So why our app crashed? So in the logcat you can see here there is an error called number format exception. So what happened is, yeah, our app is not designed to check empty values. So that is what happened, and it is called null pointer exception. And this is one of the most common exception. One more exception which I encountered on my personal use is when I don't give IDs to my elements actually, or when I use wrong IDs. So that is what has happened there. So basically you need to change these fields actually. So here is a field, value cost equal to string dot in text field, two double or null actually here. Yeah. So basically we need to make a change right here, two double or null. So let's make change. Like, we must be able to handle null values also, right? Yeah. So where is my cost field? Yeah, it's here. Yeah. So what shows an error actually? Type mismatch, two double or null. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Hmm. Okay. So what happens if our cost is null actually? We need to return out of the whole process, right? We don't want any further manipulation. So that is why we write this. So everything went well. And let's run our app right now and see what happens. Yeah. Yeah, let's run our app now. Yeah, here is the app. And let's give some amount, and to round it off, let's say, yeah, turn on the round up switch. So our main case is give empty string and check what happens. So yeah, as you can see, I didn't give any amount and our app does not crash because we have already handled the null pointer exception or the empty field exception right there. So our app is almost done. Let's see if we can find out any more bugs in our app actually. Yeah. One more thing is, like, we hit the calculate button right here. Let me show you. Yeah, we hit the calculate button. Yeah, let's give amount called 250 and let's calculate some amount, and let me clear this amount right now and calculate it again. So basically the tip amount right here, the tip amount still shows 50 pounds, so that would be a bit confusing to our user. So we want to clear this tip amount as soon as we empty our cost of service field. So let's make that change. So yeah, this is the change. So before returning you can simply add this line. Yeah, let me take Android Studio, and this would be the final line. And yes, so if the cost is null, before returning, let's make sure that we set up our result to empty string. So this is basically an empty string. So what we're doing is, if the cost is null, set our result to empty and then return. So this basically fix. Let's run it for one more final time so that we can wrap up everything. And yeah, let me give an amount right here, and let's hit calculate, and let me delete the amount. And as soon as you click the calculate button, you can see the result is has been disappeared. Yeah, so I think that's it for now, and this is it for the tip calculator app. Let's see what we have in the next module, so we can wrap it up real quick. And all we have in the next is the app theme. Basically you have a website called material design actually. Yeah, in this material.io page, you can look at all the documentation and find multiple things, multiple looks for your elements. And in this app icon, you can basically design the icon of your app. Initially, like, let me show you. You have this tip final right here, right? You want this to look different. So in that case, this module just provides that the introduction to do so. So that's it for now, guys. I think I will hand over my session to Karun from now. And if there are any doubts, you can just ping me down.
Hey guys, the session took longer than usual. So we'll be dropping a video tutorial about the second part, okay? That is how to display a scrollable list. And coming to the announcement part, we're really excited to let you know that tomorrow we'll be building a basic music player, okay, in just an hour. And the best part about this is that people who will be attending the live session will be given badges from Andhra University College of Engineering's Developer Student Club, that is DSC AUCE. So yeah, be there tomorrow. Let's learn and let's earn, okay? And also, guys, it's a hands-on session, so get ready, okay? And I want to thank our faculty advisor, Professor Valli Kumari ma'am, for constantly supporting us. And thank you so much, guys, for attending this session. And see you tomorrow.